Hello, welcome to Movers, Shakers, Designers, and Makers. I'm Steve Carpenter. I'm Dean of the College of Arts and Architecture, and I'm talking today with Adam Cohn, who earned his undergraduate degree in art with a focus in graphic design back in 1993. Earlier this year, Adam was selected by the Department of Graphic Design as the recipient of the 2020 Arts and Architecture Alumni Award. Adam, would you tell us what your position is at Converse?
Hi, Steve. Yes, I will. It's the Vice President of Global Brand Design.
So your position as Vice President of Global Brand Design for Converse sounds like a pretty amazing job to me. I have this long history with Converse shoes as a elementary school kid. I mean, you hear this story all the time, right? Elementary school kid, middle school kid, high school kid. I can tell you about the Chucks that I had, probably tell you all the different colors I had when Dr. J's came out. That was the thing to wear, man. And when clear Dr. J's came out, you knew you had reached another level. So, that's kind of my relationship with Converse. Can you tell us a little bit about your trajectory from Penn State to Converse?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go way back. After I graduated from Penn State, with a great foundation in graphic design, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet, but I knew I wanted to do something that had a lot about being useful to an audience. And my very first job was at a museum design studio in Washington, D.C., of which the owners had been members of the Eames Design Studio, which many people are going to be familiar with in terms of their furniture design, but also their exhibit design. And we did design for museums in which we were being useful to audiences and educating them about art, architecture, culture. And so that was really the beginning of my journey of being a designer that was doing work in a way that, sure, it was for commercial purposes, for a lot of the work graphic design is used for, but it's for being useful to people. And I had a few other jobs here and there. I had my own studio a few years after that, again in the DC area, where a lot of our clients were like the AIA or the Smithsonian, or different nonprofits where the work we were doing was helping people in some way, useful to people in some way beyond just commercial reasons. But I don't think that this sort of like usefulness really ramped up until I got a job out at Nike in Beaverton, Oregon. And there, literally, you are marketing products that are there to help people very tangibly on a day-to-day process, helping them stay fit, helping them get together with their communities, helping them express their own style and personal creativity. And did that work in Beaverton, Oregon for a long time near Portland. And hearts out to all the people out there that are dealing with those wildfires right now and all the other issues in Portland. And did the work in Amsterdam for 3 years as a part of Nike. So again, and really working in that same method, but in a strong international audience. And then back at Nike for a little bit after that in Portland, but then coming on to Converse around 2007. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but that's sort of the trajectory of how I got, from basically a young museum designer to a creative director and VP that's leading creative teams around the world.
Sure. Sounds like a pretty direct line, right? I mean, it's point A to point B with a lot of wiggles and moves and sidetracks in between.
Absolutely. And one of the amazing things about having such a long career inside one brand, and I think if people don't know that that Converse has been owned by Nike since the early thousands. Mm-hmm. So it's staying within the same brand, but just a different part of it, is that it is a large entity. And so I've stayed in that brand design function for a long time, but always doing different things, different aspects of design, digital, physical, branding, retail. Mm-hmm. So you really can do a lot of different things and yet still kind of have a loyalty or have an affinity for one particular brand for that duration.
Sure.
In my case.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about how your role at Converse has evolved over the time that you've been there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I first got to Converse, we were a company that was still coming out of a potential bankruptcy that had happened, in the early thousands. And we were trying to reestablish ourselves as to be relevant again. A lot of people, like you said at the beginning of this, have that story about their Chucks and their Converse, but it's one shoe and there's only so many you can sell.
Right.
And so it's really important, to be able to have a brand that's got a diversity about it, and diversity of products and diversity of stories. And so, over time, I've worked on a brand that was very, like, let's say, physically retail focused and very wholesale focused and very focused on a Chuck, to over time working on a brand that is digitally led, that is making products for skate, basketball, all types of creativity, and it's a brand that is has American roots, but really feels like it belongs to every person who touches it, whether you're in Belgrade, whether you're in South Africa, or whether you're in Beijing, or whether you're in Portland, Oregon. So that's kind of the way that it's evolved in that way. And from a terms of the work that I've been doing point of view. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're interested in the actual changes in terms of the role itself. We could talk about that too if you wanted.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I'd like to hear about that, because I would imagine over the course of the years that you've been with Converse, that role changes maybe either out of necessity because the company is presenting that that framework, or for yourself, for your own growth, for your own contributions to the company. So would you elaborate?
I definitely started at Converse. The title was a design director. So depending on who you are watching out there or listening to this, it's art director type person out there in the world. But you started out doing work that was fairly traditional. Here are products. Let's develop campaigns to sell those products in different retailers around the world. But then we realized that Converse was a very licensee-based business. So we had licensees marketing our products for us around the world at that time. Very soon it shifted to actually us taking back some of those licenses. And so we would have to do all the work ourselves. So we went from relying on a partner in China to us designing all our own stores and designing all the campaigns for Greater China. And so that's a new muscle that has to get flexed. And so I spent a lot of time traveling to Shanghai and Beijing for about 3 years, getting our footing sorted out there. Then we realized that our digital business was very elementary. You know what I mean? Like search for Converse and get driven to a Converse homepage and then, shop on a grid wall. But it was very elementary. And so I had to learn a lot in working with people that were really deep in the UX world and the digital journey world and what it means to become a digital creative director. And, make sure that you're thinking about all those elements about search, about optimizing design pages so that people can come in at different parts of the site and still have a fulfilling journey with your brand. Realize that the story just doesn't end at the homepage, that it goes all the way down into the site and it starts at email, or it can start at a text thread. So, so I have to get a lot more versed in that world. And then, obviously with the explosion of social media, realizing just how more nimble and how more broad and how more consumer connected your communications need to be. And so for the past 2 years, I've really been involved a lot in making sure that all of our design is super relevant for our social communities. So it really is an evolution of just making sure that you're trying to stay ahead of the ways that your consumer is going to interact with your brand, and then growing as a creative director to become really conversant in those languages to make sure that the creative can resonate with the audience in that way. Sure.
So there's to me, it sounds like there's a sense of being grounded and knowing your connection with design or with the product or the brand. But then there's also a degree of flexibility. You have to allow yourself to be able to move, or to be able to be open to innovation, or even with in terms of travel, right? Open to cultural differences and translating. How does that fit in? I'm guessing you didn't take a class in that covered all of these elements, but so how does that fit into this evolution? Your sense of being open, and you talked about being nimble, but there's also an openness culturally, socially, and otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great question. I like what you said though a second ago about the grounding, and that is that you have to be grounded if you're gonna work for a brand and you're gonna design for a brand. You and your colleagues in marketing, in sales, all across the company have to be grounded in a common understanding about what your mission, your vision, and your position is as a brand. And Converse has those. And so if you're all grounded in that, then that does make a lot of other things easier. You know that if it's then time to ramp up a way that you're going to start to tell stories in China, you still know, like, okay, great, I have to do that, but I know that I'm grounded in these philosophies around the consumer decides, for example. It's all about the consumer or the audience and their wants. And so you know that you're not going into Beijing then and saying, okay, our brand stands for this, and we're going to paste this over you in a market in China. You're going to go there and be like, okay, wait a minute, it's about the community. So I need to immerse myself in the community in Beijing and find out what those kids are interested in, what drives them, what are they passionate about, and then make sure that our brand message can serve them in that way versus, let's say, the other way around. So that grounding is super important, but then, yeah, the flexibility. And for Converse in particular, the thing that's really amazing for us is that it really is so much about our audience. Like you talked about your experiences in Chuck's. I bet there were a lot of times where you didn't necessarily think that you were joining a Converse brand when you put those on. You knew you were expressing yourself when you put those shoes on. And a lot of people feel that way. I think that's why you see a lot of other brands doing TV commercials out there or online advertising, and they put the person in the ad in a generic shoe. It's a Chuck. How much work have you seen that's been done? A lot of people feel like they own our brand. It isn't like they're joining Converse. Mm-hmm. And so that's a real advantage in the sense that we can tap into the way that different cultures and audiences feel about Converse and celebrate those things rather than having to foist some sort of point of view upon them.
Sure. No, it's a great way to think about it. So I want to shift just a little bit and think about, you mentioned earlier, people listening or watching this interview. There's a question that many students actually a couple of questions that can tend to get packaged together that many students ask alumni that I've picked up on. One of them is, so when did you know you wanted to be a X? So when did you know you wanted to be a designer? You've talked about being an art director, but essentially, we can think of maybe in terms of designer. So when did you know you wanted to be a designer? And then how does what you do today, and you've touched upon this a bit, differ from what you thought you would be doing at this point in your career?
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good question. As a kid, I was always designing. I just didn't know it. You know what I mean? It was the early and mid 80s. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. You know what I mean? Like I was really into politics. I'm really into history personally. And so I'm like, okay, like I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to do some good out there in the world somehow. And, I was taking half of my time at Penn State, I was like taking political science classes and all that kind of stuff. But I was always designing the entire time, for my fraternity, for friends, t-shirts, logos, drawing things, creating design. I just didn't know that it was called graphic design. And then just to get very specific, I had a friend who was trying to get into the design program, and she's like, what you're doing is graphic design. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so I ended up like seeing her portfolio, but it really wasn't until I took my first like design class, I think it was called Art 270, Introduction to Graphic Design. And, the teacher really talked about that moment where a visual and a verbal come together to like communicate a message. And it could have been like one of Lanny's, anti-war posters. It could have been any number of like sort of, I'm sure it was a political poster. I can't remember the exact one, but there was this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, that's an incredibly powerful piece of communication. And it was done so simply and so succinctly. I want to do that. I want to be able to communicate something very complex and very emotional in the most succinct and like understandable way possible so that millions of people can understand this thing. So for me, I can't pick out the moment or the piece of graphic design that inspired it, but I had this realization at the beginning of my education in design about how powerful a piece of design could be. And I wanted to be able to participate in that.
Is that something that's profound to have a memory like that? Again, like you're saying, maybe not a particular work, but there's this moment that seems to be transitional or transformational, even, if you will, for you. I think that's powerful. You mentioned Lanny Samis is who you're
Lanny Samis, former head of the design department. He was a person that really understood, I think, the simplicity and brevity of the graphic design and the minimalism aspect of it. that can be so beautiful. You know what I mean? Like he would show us, the work of like the original El Producto cigar campaign, in which, someone took cigars, but then like did doodles around them, and they were able to turn that cigar into a thing for any occasion. And I'm not advocating for smoking, but then, then show that, the Absolute Vodka campaigns of the 80s were basically direct rips of the El Producto campaign with that whole, there's nothing new anymore. But I mean, right. Like that simplicity of design communication is what like was that original inspiration. I think Lanny was very good at, he was, a child of that 50s, 60s era of graphic design that was so succinct and simple in some ways. And he gave us all, I think, a really good foundation in that part of design that was important to me.
Yeah, I'm certain his teaching has been influential for many, many people.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's watching this that is from that era will remember that, and I still use it today with the designers that I'm coaching today, is this notion of one hero. And when you look at designer communication that's trying to do too much, I think for without a doubt, the message is mixed, the message is confused. But when you see communication out there that's got one hero to it, there's one thing they're really trying to make happen in that piece of design or communication, you feel it, you feel its power. And I would say that was one of the biggest things I took away from his teaching.
Wow. Well, I want to shift again. So you and I were having this conversation. It's mid-September 2020. And again, normally we'd be finalizing details to get you here on campus. We plans to have lunch, meet with students, meet with faculty. That's not happening.
Right.
The COVID-19 pandemic has literally prevented us from taking on some of the annual events that we typically do in traditional ways. It's required us to shift. This conversation we would have most likely have had you been here, but we'd be in the studio together or in a classroom together talking. So in addition to COVID, we have this layered thing going on. The country's engulfed in a complex set of issues in terms of economic challenges, climate change debates, and the relentless public examples of social injustice and racial injustice and violence. So what is you also mentioned your affinity to history, which and cultural knowledge and cultural engagements. What is the current social and cultural moment mean to you?
I mean, it's so complex. What it means to me personally is that you can't miss an opportunity to be vocal about where you stand and make sure the people that are around you, your friends and your family, and actually anyone who listens to you, let's say via social, knows exactly what you stand for and what you believe in. And, I've been doing that on my own personally with, through design and through, my points of view on what's going on right now. And all through the lens of believing that what's happening right now is completely unacceptable, and that, I believe in Black Lives Matter, and I believe that that everybody has the opportunity to achieve their dreams and goals in life. And the fact that there are people out there that are being impeded in having these basic human rights is just abhorrent to me. So it means that to me in one level. On another level, it means that I also have to do whatever I can in my power in terms of my role at Converse to enable other people to somehow achieve their goals. And, if you've been watching Converse at all over the past few weeks, you've seen that we've been really trying to tell stories of youth that are trying to make a difference in the world in positive ways. We're trying to drive people to vote. And we're trying to make sure that everyone realizes that, who you are and being able to express yourselves is supremely important. And if I can also help bring the power of this brand to bear upon getting that message out, then that's another response that I have to have as a person. And I don't think that I could work for a company that didn't believe in those, in enabling youth that way and enabling, human potential in that way. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think personally and professionally, I'm doing whatever I can to live by this notion. I mean, just to get a little bit deeper on this, some people ask the question, what is it about Converse that drives me so much? Here's this core product that is a leveler. It's a very affordable piece of footwear that anybody and everybody can wear. And it doesn't matter if you're a multi-billionaire or whether you're a young kid just starting out. When everyone wears that pair of Chucks, you're all part of a similar mindset about expression and possibility and creativity. And it's democratic. And so, you know, that's part of who I am as a person. You know, let's make sure that, you know, that everyone's lives matter, but until certain people's lives matter, none of them can matter. So I believe in Black Lives Matter, but I believe that in that potential. And so I think this democratic nature of Converse allows for that potential. I'm kind of rambling a little bit on that answer, Steve, but I just feel so passionately about it. And to be able to work for a company that's helping make that possible, I can't think of a better situation.
I hear you. That the question was layered, right? Because the moment is layered.
Yeah.
Because the issues are layered.
Yeah.
So rambling, I didn't see you rambling. I saw you parsing out the complex components.
Yeah,
and among the pieces that I heard you share was the fact of the Chucks being a leveler, right? There's this notion that people, I mean, that's essentially it, people.
Yeah.
Right? And so people matter, but until all people can be seen as valued and treated as people, maybe we don't have a sense of what it means to treat people as people.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that might be oversimplifying it, but I heard something quite profound, and I have numerous things that were profound in what you said. But you're speaking to the complexities of the social, cultural moment that I think matter quite a bit. So thanks for sharing that. You also use some phrasing that I've heard either come out of the mouths of people that I've found to be influential teachers, or that have essentially sound like answers that I've heard other people say when asked about influential teachers. And that is, you said something to the effect of making a positive difference in the lives of other people. And I just want to recognize that, because to me, that's the sign of a leader. That's the sign of a strong teacher. And it sounds like you have, you embody those, you live those, and you try to work toward those goals. No,
I mean, it's interesting you brought that up, because I talked a little bit about this when I gave a talk back at Penn State 2 years ago, where the title of my presentation was, "It's not about you," but it is. But I don't know where I picked this up from, but some of the designers that I admire most were very, very anonymous. You know, there's a guy named Hans Schlager who changed his name to Zero, literally changed his name to Zero, because the work was what was important. It wasn't about him. And there's this other Bauhaus designer, Laszlo Moholy-Nagy, who really did work to anonymize himself. You know, he wore a similar kind of red, gray jumpsuit every day, and it wasn't about his own personal design and his own personal flair as a creative. It was just about the work. You know, don't look at me, look at this thing that I saw, look at this message that I'm telling you. And that really resonated with me. And so that notion that that it's not about the individual, but it's about the work, and it's about helping other people. It's about kind of just making that difference, but not necessarily needing credit for it or anything like that. That's been a big part of my upbringing as a designer. And I definitely got a lot of those philosophies through the kind of the simple design philosophies that I learned at Penn State.
Nice. Well, I think you brought those philosophies back. I mean, you talked about the presentation, the talk that you gave, but while you were here, you also visited a class you'd been working with an upper level undergraduate class. Associate Professor Ryan Russell was the instructor.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that interaction you had with those students in the class? I know that you had them work through a set of problems around some design problems with Converse. Tell us about that, and maybe even include what motivated you to want to engage with students. I mean, I kind of picking up on some of that, but can you elaborate on that experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks
for asking.
Yeah.
So I've always been trying to figure out a way how to kind of give back to Penn State and get back to the design program specifically, because I really do believe that Penn State makes some of the best graphic designers in the world. And some of my friends out there that I'm still friends with from design are among them. And I just think it's a special thing. And so, but I had seen some work that was kind of coming out of the school. And although some of it was looking really, really great, there was something about it that I didn't think was just right yet for what I saw was happening in terms of people that wanted to work for brands. And that there was a little bit of a lack of deeper storytelling and also understanding of the context in which a lot of the work might be seen, reviewed, or consumed by audiences in the future. And that's not to say that the school wasn't, having their students do work for digital or do work, in new mediums, but I didn't think they were getting a full picture of what it meant. Like, hey, if you were going to be a storyteller for a brand, which I think is something that transcends just design, and that if you think about the future of creatives, I think they're going to need to be people that can think broader like that, not just like, here's the font, but here's the font, here's why, here's the deeper story, here's the significance, etc. Then I wanted to bring some of that to the team. So I reached out to the school, and Ryan and I connected, and we set up a curriculum for basically like, hey, let's do a Converse project. But it was a spec project. It wasn't a real project, and maybe we'll get there at some point. But it was a spec project to kind of say like, hey, if you're going to develop storytelling for a product and a brand, and it was going to go across all these different channels of social, digital, physical retail, brand experiences, packaging, branding, what would that look like? And, Ryan and I built this little mini curriculum, this little mini class, and, it was so much fun. And the students were so amazing at diving right in. There was some education up front, which was great, about, hey, here's what Converse does. Here's how we believe these things work. And then really kind of letting the students loose. And it was also a great exercise in how to work. The very first time we did it, it was a combination of, Zoom and in-person connections. And then the second time we did it, just this past semester, it was 100% Zoom, unfortunately, but still amazing work came out of it. And it was really all just based on this idea that selfishly, I wanted to see more Penn State graphic designers out there that were elevating themselves to a new level of amazingness. Because the Penn State student already has a tremendous foundation in the core of graphic design, the why. What does it mean to bring visual and verbal together, to just do concepts, not just decoration? And that's always been the strong thing about Penn State. And I just wanted to see if I could add a little bit more in terms of, like, let's say, the broader meaning. Because, we talked a little bit about my time at Nike and stuff. I've been just as involved over time in the strategy as to why we're doing creative and not just the what it looks like. And I think that's what's given me a lot of satisfaction, is that, your brain is being used not just for the aesthetic aspect, but for the strategic and the sort of conceptual aspect of it. And I got that foundation at Penn State, and I just wanted future students to be able to have those same possibilities and capabilities.
That's great. The why, that's the foundation of philosophy, right? It's a discipline grounded in why. And then it's not about finding a finite answer. It's actually about the process of engaging in inquiry in response to why, which opens up other directions. I'm sure the students just, what was your sense of the students' response to your interactions with them in this curriculum?
I mean, of course, first off, it's always, I think, a little bit tentative, but you could really, really sense that, after an initial connection, there was a deep, like, all right, great, we're doing this. And there was I think, a lack of fear on most of their parts, in the sense, like, all right, like, I'm just going to go for it. You know what I mean? Like, and I talked to them a lot about, like, listen, you guys got to put yourself inside the path of possibility. You know what I mean? And a lot of them embrace that path of possibility by connecting with me outside of class, by helping me to leverage my networks to help them down the road and things like that. I've helped a few kids find some interesting positions post their grad or for internships and things like that. And so a lot of them really embrace that notion of like, okay, like, am I going to use this opportunity to its fullest, or am I going to do the assignment? And I think most people really embrace the opportunity to kind of like get the most out of it, which I guess I shouldn't expect anything less, especially out of this generation, which a lot of people, that aren't educated about them have a lot of crap to say about it. But I find these kids to be some of the most exciting people I've ever met in terms of just their community mentality, their ability to help one another, and their ability to kind of really go for it and own their future. It's really inspirational.
Yeah, no, I hear you. One of the things I say, I've caught myself saying, and other people have caught me saying frequently and recently about the college is the resilience and the resourcefulness of the college is inspirational. And yeah. I think it's found in the staff, in the faculty, but most definitely in the students.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to illustrate that point, Steve, I mean, when we were, a quarter of the way through the project this past year when COVID-19 hit, and, there were, I think, 5 groups of students that were doing the project, and not all of them were at the same level of completion by the time COVID hit. And so, we had to have this one meeting, which was a really great meeting, where I'm like, all right, listen, how do we rejigger? How do we rethink the way that you might approach these creative solutions based off of the resources you're all going to have available in, towns all over the place? And in some cases, I think there was one student that went back to China in the middle of the semester. So like all around the world. And they were super nimble and actually some of the work was, even better because of the adversity. And, I think a lot of people will appreciate, this comment that like, constraints really make for amazing design. Yeah. I mean, you tell me I can't do 5 or 6 things, but I'm going to find the inner space inside of there and make something even better because of the constraints. And the students were, to your point, very resilient in coming in the way that they faced the adversity of COVID-19 and this important project to them.
Yeah, nice. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
you took me back to my undergraduate studies. I studied at not at Penn State for my undergraduate degree. I went to Slippery Rock University in Western Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And I recall a couple of my professors in different ways, their advice, if, we were stuck working on a project, whether it was, we're in sculpture or ceramics or something, they would say, well, take something away, right? Take one of the components of what you're working with, whether it's materials or tools, take one of the elements away and then try to solve it with less, not with more. Try to solve with fewer options, and it opens up more possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were talking about, the love of history earlier, and that's why, I read this book about Lincoln's speeches all the time, because his reductive nature in writing was unbelievable. And, that notion of like, how can I do the same power with less things? To your point, is super amazing. I think that's why I like Lego and Playmobil so much. If you look at a Playmobil firefighter, what's the least amount of graphics and shapes I can have on this thing, yet you still know this is a hazmat firefighter. You know what I mean? So, it's that kind of reductiveness is really impressive.
Yeah, I hear you. So just, I'm thinking about these students still, right? Or maybe I'm thinking about their parents, or I'm thinking about other folks who would assume that, it's the technical skills in graphic design, or it's the technical, there's probably formulas for becoming a global brand designer, right? But you're talking about so much more. And when you were talking about working with Ryan and developing a curriculum, and, for lack of a more in-depth definition, curriculum is educational experience. It's not necessarily a thing or a set of objectives. It's educational experience. So in that experience, you are able to introduce or help refine characteristics for being a designer or global brand designer, or more so than technical skills, perhaps. So are there attributes beyond what people might assume to be like the technical skills or formula for a designer that you look for? They're conventional meaning people who are not necessarily in what you do.
Yeah.
What do you look for?
I think one of them, and this word is getting used a lot, but I really do think it is storytelling. You know what I mean? Are you able to take me on a journey somewhere with this thing you're trying to convey to me, candidate X or person Y? Are you a storyteller? You know what I mean? Are you going to make me feel something? And then the tools with which you can do that are the ones that are the best of your abilities. We were talking about Lanny earlier. Lanny doesn't know how to do anything other than scan images out of books and draw really bad drawings with his pencil. And if he's watching this, he's going to get mad. But he'd be the first one to say, I don't know how to draw hands or faces, but I'm going to use the tools that I have available to take you on this journey and tell the story. And by the way, he knows how to do a lot more than that. And so I think for anybody who's looking to be in graphic design or this kind of creative storytelling, use the tools you have available. There was a student in the last class that was an amazing painter, and she ended up mashing up these amazing paintings with one of our sneakers, and the result blew my mind. So I'm like, wow, there's the intersection of creativity and sport, and that's what a lot of people that are buying Converse Pro leather sneakers want right now. They want that intersection between sport and creativity. And she brought it. But you wouldn't look at her painting portfolio and be like, oh wow, this person's not going to create for a global lifestyle brand. But she used the tools she had available to her, and your end result was amazing. So I think, to get back to your question, I think you have to, the outside of the technical skills of being really understanding typography, understanding, positive and negative and shape and form and balance and all those things, is that, are you a good storyteller? And then you have a creative medium at your disposal that you do master, or that you do know a lot about, that you can use to help get that story out there? Or as you grow in your career, are you someone who is a amazing curator of talent or a researcher of talent that you might not do the work, but you might be an amazing art director because you know how to bring the right photographer and writer and illustrator together to bring to bear on a project and help them create that vision for you, like a film director. A lot of film directors aren't cinematographers, but they understand how to put a story together and how to bring talented people together into that space. So I think hopefully that answers your question. I think it does.
It does. It does. I mean, you're talking about, and again, the technical skills are important. We're not pushing those aside, but
No,
what you're
without a
talking
doubt.
about, no question. But what you're talking about, and I love this, you're helping me think through possibilities of what it means to tell a story. We can use written language, verbal language, there's visual, symbolic. I mean, there are numerous ways to tell stories, but then there's also, it's about proximity. I mean, you think about putting different people together, and they might come up with a solution. You put two other people together, come up with the same problem, a different solution. You can have different combinations of people. Like you said, the painting and a shoe together, but you could have someone who's working in another medium, because their experiences will inform the ways in which they use the media and intersect with the shoe. I mean, storytelling is also about relationships. You're talking about developing relationships and providing spaces for those relationships to take flight. And what I find also then layered, I'm back to the notion of layered. I mean, some of the most interesting stories are complex because, and layered, is the cultural, right? Or the global, and how you, just getting back to, as you were talking about, how a chuck can be a leveling piece without taking away from or overly informing a cultural space that it's in. As a matter of fact, it kind of, using a food metaphor, it kind of takes on the flavor of that culture and 100%. Allows you to enhance it, right?
100%. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is really exciting to me to talk about what you do. I mean, and to talk about it in these ways is really exciting. I have a blast chatting with people about what they do. So I assume you are working on a lot of exciting things now without, sharing all the company secrets, without, giving too much away. Is there anything exciting that you're working on you can talk to us about that, what's exciting you now about the work you're doing?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm obviously, I get aware of, different products and things like that coming down the road, but I really won't talk about those. But I think the thing that I'm most excited about is something that I touched on a little bit earlier. And that is this notion of our brand doesn't really exist without our audience. And right now, and people can see this right now if they go onto our channels, our social channels, or our digital channels, is that that's finally coming to fruition in a really, really big way. And it's going to get even bigger in terms of the fact that we're not putting a slogan out there or telling anyone to do a thing. We are celebrating the democracy and universality of our brand through the people that wear it. And this isn't just about, testimonial films of like, oh, I wore a Chuck when I was 12 and I did this stuff. Mm-hmm. This is really more about, telling the stories of creatives, of kids that are making a difference out there for themselves, making a difference in their communities, and that Converse is there to help them in some way. But it's really not about us. And it kind of gets back to that point that I made, that it's like, we're going to get the credit and the fact that, yes, we're going to sell product and our brand, but more importantly, our brand is going to be known for enabling humans in this way. And so the thing that's coming in the future that I'm much more excited about is that we're going to have even more products and even more stories to tell, in which the focus is put on the humans that are wearing them and the humans that are out there in our communities, and celebrating that as the voice of Converse. And you're already starting to see that happen right now. And you're going to see even a lot more of that, so that people will really be like, wow, what does Converse stand for? They stand for all of us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They stand for me, and what my dreams are.
They stand for each of us, and they stand for all of us.
That's right. We stand for the individual, but then we also stand for the collective. You know what I mean? And I think that's a rare thing to do. You know what I mean? That someone can feel that they're personally being supported, get in that support, they look around and are like, wow, I'm part of a community of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people that are being enabled and supported this way by Converse. And, thank you for being there for us. I think you're seeing that happen right now, and that mindset's going to get even stronger.
Sure. That's powerful. Well, I'm eager to see how I'm going to continue to track Converse and to see how these ideas manifest. It's inspirational. Gives me some hope, additional hope for where we will be going as humans in the world. So, how can I set this up? This is how I want to set it up. When we started the conversation, I couldn't hold back by telling you my relationship with Chuck's and Dr. J's. I mean, those were the shoes. I'm not just saying it because, I would say it if I was not talking to you, if I was talking to somebody else and we were talking about what shoes did you wear when you were a kid?
Yeah.
But it was in high school where the Dr. J's were the thing.
Yep.
And so I'm reflecting on high school, 17, 18-year-old Steve. Can you think back to 17 or 18-year-old Adam? What would you tell him now if you could talk to 17 or 18-year-old Adam? What would you tell him?
Besides buy Apple stock?
Yes. This is not a Back to the Future moment, but yeah, go.
Wow. I would say, I think the most important thing I would say to myself back at that time was, don't settle for something else until you really know who you are and what your personal purpose is, and make the sacrifices you need to do whatever, pay your bills, live your life or whatever, so that you don't spend a moment doing something that is not right for you. And I know that sounds very, it can sound very like, commencement address or whatever, but I really, really believe in that. You know what I mean? Like, being so involved right now in purpose-driven work, and trying to be more involved in purpose-driven work, would make me say, like, I really wish that I had leaned into that mentality at 17 or 18, especially if you look at what some of the kids today are achieving at younger ages. Maybe when you and I were coming up, Steve, we would like hear a story about someone's like, well, did you know that so-and-so was only 25 when they achieved this great feat? And we'd be like, oh, wow. Well, kids today are going to be learning stories. Did you realize that Greta Thunberg was only 14 years old when she achieved this great feat? And so like, I think that, I would say to myself, don't sell yourself short, and don't just compromise until you really know what difference you want to make and what purpose you want to have.
I hear you. I hope young Adam would have listened? What would he have done?
I think he would have listened now. I think, yeah, if young Adam was alive right now, I think he would have. Back then.
Back then, maybe not. Okay.
But, there's a question like I asked to a lot of kids that like interview, or that I'm interviewing, that are coming to Converse, kids, younger professionals. And I asked them the question like, all right, let's say you get this job. How will this company be different in a year because of you having been here? And not like that there's more revenue or that we got X more followers on our social, like no, not metrics, but like, how will our brand have changed? What difference will you have made in our brand because you've been here for a year? And that's about purpose. You know what I mean? That's about like knowing who you are and coming into a company and knowing like, all right, I'm not just getting this job because I just graduated and I need a job. I've decided to come try to get this job because I know who I want to be as a human. And this job is the first step on my way to becoming more of that human. I think that's kind of related to the question you asked, but I would say for any up and coming people watching this, they'd be like, take the time to figure out who you are. Don't go into an interview saying that my goal is to be a creative director. Your goal should be, I want to be a director of this kind of work for this kind of reason, for this kind of purpose. And if it ends up that I'm a creative director or that I'm some other title, who cares? But I'm doing that work for these reasons. So purpose, I think, would be, the most important thing.
It gets back to that why.
Yeah.
It gets back to that why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Adam, this has been great. I really appreciated chatting with you. I have a few more questions to ask you.
Great.
In the final minutes together. And these questions are Penn State related questions. So you're already in the mindset of your 17, 18-year-old Adam, just,
right.
Over the summer now you're at Penn State as an undergraduate. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, kind of straightforward, brief questions. Give me the response back.
Got it.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
What's your favorite flavor of Penn State Creamery ice cream?
The peanut butter one. I can't remember the name now.
I think we'll call it the peanut butter one from now on. Get some Sharpies out. Where is the first place you lived while you were at Penn State?
God, it was summer session, 1988. It was one of the South Halls. Gosh, the one that was like furthest east in South Halls.
Okay.
Can't remember.
That's all right. We'll take
down
that
there.
Who was one person, I might already know this answer, but who is the one person who influenced your time while you're here at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, it's without a doubt, my professor in design, Lanny, was a huge, that could be, do I have to answer that question quickly or?
No, you can, it could be a multi-part response if you'd like.
Yeah. I mean, Lanny, without a doubt, but I have to say, and I will not remember their names, but one was my religious studies teacher that really, really expanded my horizons in terms of the wider universe of acceptance of different ways of thinking. And then two was a literature teacher, amazing individual. His name was T. Tramble Turner III, wore a brown three-piece suit with big red hair every day to class, but he was a short story teacher. And I learned everything that I appreciate about storytelling from that short stories class. So I think between my design professor, my religious studies professor, and that short story professor, big influence from a Penn State point of view.
Wow. That triangulation is just, I love it. If you had to pick one moment or one experience from Penn State that stands out for you, what would it be?
Again, this is a little bit of a longer story, but when you're a senior at Penn State in design, you put on a show called The Film Follies, in which all of these motion pieces that the team creates over a semester are put together into one final compilation film or moment. And back then, it wasn't, all run off a keynote. You had individual slideshows and films that had to get put together via this very arcane digital method. And long story short, halfway through the presentation, this box that ran all the presentations fried, and the entire presentation shut down in the middle. And you had probably 300 parents, fellow students, alumni, potential job prospects, all in the audience, and you had your classmates' work being sacrificed, and the presentation on work being sacrificed because of this technology. And I was the leader of the technical crew. And it was a big failure. We ended up surviving it. We ended up resurrecting it, but it was a failure. It was a big failure. But I learned so much about teamwork and relying on team members and crisis management, and also grace under adversity in that moment that stuck with me a long time. So that massive failure at really what was meant to be the penultimate moment in our design careers, I've learned a lot from that.
Wow. It's an influential moment for sure.
Yeah.
All right, final big question. What was your favorite spot on campus?
Wow. It's such a tough question. I mean, there's so many tremendous parts of campus, but I guess for me, it always will be, at the top of Petit steps, looking down over the elms all the way down to, it's one hero. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Steve,
Wow.
There's a massive lawn that goes down the center of campus that's framed by these majestic trees, of which I know there's plenty of problems with those trees, but that's a one hero moment right there that I think defines the campus. And also you think about that whole area there, you've got literature, at least at the time, and when I was there was literature buildings on the left and the right. At the end of it is this huge repository of information in the library. And at the other end is sort of the town and the culture of Penn State, with the corner room and Allen Street and everything like that. It really is that might sound overly romantic, but.
No, it's great. I tell you what, the next time I am on campus at Petit Library, I was standing up there and I will think the one hero.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. No, thanks.
Also, Beaver Stadium. Come on.
Close second is Beaver Stadium.
Yeah. I have to say that in my time there, I only missed one game because I was in the photo studio developing film for a deadline for design. But other than that, with all the craziness of the Penn State schedule, I didn't miss a game. So
is that right?
Except for one.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Adam, this has been a thrill. It's been great talking to you. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to sit down and have a chat through the screen and the Wi-Fi and all that. Yeah. Listen, you're the reason why we give out these alumni awards. You are just the epitome of what that award stands for. So thanks so much for your time. And I look forward to having you as part of our celebration in fall of 2021.
Great. Steve, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity, both to talk with you and meet you and get to know you, to talk about my career, to talk about Penn State and my love for this place, and for the award as well. It means so much to me. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.